What are your 3 biggest doubts about the Bible?
Are you rolling?
Yeah, I am rolling.
Welcome back to the Deep Homie Guide podcast, the show that considers emerging technology and trends in the 21st century. And we try to do it with wisdom if we can. Trying really hard. Today is May 4th, 2021, and we're blessed to have Pastor Jordan Carter with us. Hey, how you doing, man?
I am doing excellent today. I'm super excited to be here. You guys are a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to having some fun with you guys.
Let's talk about some fun, interesting stuff. How you doing, P?
I'm doing all right, you know?
All right.
It's a beautiful day. Not really, but, you know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit rainy, but you know that you can tell the sun's on the way when it's raining like this. You got to get through the rainy spring. You know the summer's going to be verdant and green. You know,
There's beauty in each season.
There sure is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I mean, for the folks at home who do not know Pastor Jordan, let me give a little intro. Jordan is the missions and outreach pastor at Abundant Life Christian Center in East Syracuse, New York, and he became an ordained minister there, and he's a passionate speaker that brings the spiritual and the practical into every message he gives, and I love that because we've talked a lot about anything on this podcast. We try to be practical with it. Anything, any wisdom or any tech, anything, we try to be practical with it. So I love that, and I know you got your degree at Oral Roberts, and you're getting an MA in organizational leadership and consulting right now, and man, you're doing a lot of stuff. You're co-founder, chief innovation officer of MeshTeams. This is, you're a busy guy.
Yeah, got a lot of things going on.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, man, what's it all about for you, man? What is the mission, first of all, what is your mission as a pastor?
Sure. You know, I personally love to see people walk in the fullness of what they're made to be. That makes me excited. I get more excited about seeing somebody rise up and become and find their purpose and find the way that God fashioned them uniquely than I even do about me performing at a high level. I can perform and it's important to work on my own level of performance and all of those kinds of things. But what really gets me going is when I see somebody else rise up and achieve what they're called to be and to do. And so as a leader and as a pastor, my goal is to make myself progressively unnecessary. So in whatever environment I'm in, I want to create an environment where I'm leading in a way, I'm being an example in a way where I can help other people rise up and eventually take over what I'm doing so I can move on to something else and help other people achieve what they're called to be.
And see, that's important too, because a lot of the bad religious and cult leaders are people who try to handhold people and never, you always need the next message from that person in order for you to be able to exist. And, the best kind of spiritual leader, I think, is somebody who's trying to give the keys of freedom to somebody.
Well, okay, so let's just take this for example. So you have the celebrity pastors of the 21st century. That's a big thing. You have all the names out there, right? The people you know. And a lot of those ministers have built a following around their own ability to perform rather than their ability to lead and to develop a culture that's built on the message itself.
Yeah.
And so then I look back to Jesus, right? So he had a huge following, people following him around all over the place. He walked through crowds, all this stuff. But his entire goal was to make himself no longer necessary because he knew he was going to leave. Mm-hmm. So he took 12 dudes, developed them, taught them, helped them practice all of those things, and then said, hey, I'm out. You got to do this now.
Yeah.
And then those 12 dudes started the global movement that I am a part of today, right? Billions of people are a part of what one man started.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a perfect example. I was going to talk about this later, but you just got back from Kenya on a mission trip.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain the situation over there with the boys' home and how you're helping them to get on their feet and do their own thing, and get back to their own families?
Yeah, so we have so Abundant Life, we started a children's home in Bungoma, Kenya. It's Western Kenya. And there's an epidemic there of children that live on the street, either from mortality rates of parents, or whether they're orphaned, or whether there's just problems in the home, or whether it's just like any of our urban environments where kids rebel and they run away and they want to be a part of a community that's not in their home, so they become a part of the street boys, right? Sounds kind of cool, the street boys. Anyway, but they're in these streets and they're malnourished, but they're all together. They're like a family. And so we wanted to do something about that. We've been working in Bungoma with a church there for over 20 years, and we noticed the issue. We said, hey, we want to tackle this. So we started this home. It's called the Reach International Children's Home.
Yes.
And we do three things. We rescue, we rehabilitate, and we restore. So we rescue the boys off the street, we rehabilitate them and renovate their minds, their bodies, their spirits, and then we restore them back to homes, whether it's their family of origin or next of kin.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
That's warms my heart, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's an awesome goal and mission, and it's working, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so you work at Abundant Life Christian Center.
Yes, sir.
And that church was founded by your father, I believe, in the 70s, maybe?
1990.
Oh, 90.
So
okay.
my father, Pastor John Carter, he started the church in his living room with 10 people, no marketing, on purpose.
Outside of Syracuse University, right? Like a little,
Yep.
I
Yes,
was
sir.
reading the bio.
Yeah, he taught from a microwave cart. The first time he taught.
Also, Pastor John, I'm sorry I said the 70s. That doesn't make any sense at all. Because he grew up by my mother, so my mom is also equally offended by my foolishness. I apologize. It was sometime back in the day in my mind. It just was the 70s.
That's okay.
I was hoping for
back in
bell
the day.
bottoms. I didn't know.
Yeah. So I was born the day after he started the church in his living room. So my mom went into labor with me. I'm his oldest son. And my mom went into labor with me right after the very first church service. So me and the church are born like hand in hand.
Yeah, man.
So we're both 31 years old.
Oh, wow. Far
Yeah.
out. Isn't that, wait, how old was Jesus Christ when he was?
33 when he
Getting near that age, buddy.
left. Yeah.
And it took a dark turn.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just making a joke. But no, I mean, it's interesting because we grew up, down the road from one another
Yes.
out in Beeville. You and I weren't, as close, but I was friends with your younger brother Josh, and so I had some interaction with your pop, and it always seemed like a very wise man, because we were getting into lots of trouble in middle school and all that other stuff, and partying and all that other stupid stuff, and out of all the parents I've ever met, Beeville or wherever. Like if we got in trouble, he was the wisest. He'd bring us into the sunroom.
Mm-hmm.
We'd all just be like
the sunroom
in the middle of the
room
night.
Power.
Well, yeah, but in the middle of the night, so it's just like, oh, with all the lights on, we're like, oh, we're just like, and he would just be like, all right, so what happened? All right, and he would just like sort things out. So I have a lot of respect for him. But growing up with a pastor father like that was like almost having like the spiritual keys in your home or something, or was it like a cheat code, like the Tony Hawk cheat codes to do the 900, or what was it? Was it awesome? What was it like?
Tony Hawk cheat code. That's excellent. He's my dad. Like, you have dads, I have a dad.
Yeah.
Even though he's wise and knows all these things, like his first role in my life is not pastor, wise, sage, as he is to many other people. He's my dad. So, so I would say it was nice having a fountain of knowledge and wisdom when it came to spiritual matters and life matters, because they should intersect. And he helped me metabolize those things and all of that. So it was really great. I think the number one thing my dad taught me was how to integrate positive and negative things together. That one truth doesn't always disqualify another truth just because this side wants you to believe it and this side wants you to believe this other thing.
Wait, could you expound upon that a little more?
Sure.
That's a very interesting point. It sounds like you're talking about kind of duality or something here.
Well, it's integration, right? It's being able to hold two things at one time, right?
Yeah.
So in our current culture, we find that, white evangelicals, broad brushed, is on the conservative side of Christianity, right?
Okay.
And that in order to be aligned with them, you have to vote this way, believe these things, and have these tenets. Well, that's not altogether true. That's actually a false narrative to believe about yourself, because there's parts of the left politically or whatever that I think are positive, and there's parts of the right that I think are extremely positive.
I agree, actually.
Why do we have to pick a side and be polarized in that way? And that's because there's people that are highly invested in keeping it that way. So
right.
So
Wedge
growing up,
issues. Yes, and it's. I think it's a lot of it is the media too. The media.
Yeah.
What sells is conflict. Conflict sells. So they got to drum up any given conflict. They got to throw fire or throw gas on it.
they're highly invested in keeping you polarized.
Yeah.
Highly invested in it, and there's a lot of money in that. But that's what I learned. So growing up, we learned that hey, this can be true. And so can this. They don't have to be. They're not necessarily in conflict with one another. They may be in conflict with the people who've chosen the sides, but it's not necessarily in disagreement.
And also, I think that speaking of white evangelicals, I think that I saw on your website, and I've been to Abundant Life a couple of times. I think you guys have a very, very diverse congregation.
Yes, sir.
That's really cool.
Very much so, and we're intentionally so. We say our church looks like heaven, and because we believe heaven has many nations and people from all over the world, and So we don't want to live in a monoculture, because then you're living in an echo chamber of your own beliefs, understandings, biases, all those things. So
Yeah.
we wanted to create a church where people from black and white and brown and people of all different ethnic stripes can come together and be unified around worshiping Jesus. And, and also in that process, gain to understand one another better.
Can I ask this though? Like,
Sure.
I've attended a few churches in my day.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and guess every church that I've ever attended was predominantly white. Obviously there was some, but the goal, being on staff at certain churches, the goal was always, hey, we want it to be diverse. We hope to be diverse. What do you think? What do you think part of what led to you, your father, your family, everything? Like, not, I don't mean to give all the credit just to your family. What actually led to saying, hey, we don't want this. Sure, we don't want to be monoculture, if you will. What actually was the secret sauce to make it work, do you think?
Work. Lots of work.
And so it wasn't just naming it All Nations Boulevard?
It's not just a mission statement. Exactly.
Oh, you guys get to name it that?
Yeah. Well,
their street name is All Nations Boulevard.
I knew that. I should know if they named it that.
It's called.
I like that.
It's work. It's not to build diversity is not easy. It's actually, it goes against the grain of humanity in some ways, because you want to be alike and be with those who are akin to you and all those things. And so we wanted to build that, and in order to build that, you have to do the work of leaning into uncomfortable conversations on a regular basis, and leaning into, hey, your perspective is this, and I've never experienced that. So let's just take policing, for example. I'm a white dude, was raised in the suburbs. I've never been pulled over and been in fear. Never.
One time for me. One time.
But there's other people that have legitimate experiences of that. So how do and where this conversation stops and where diversity ends is when I stop listening to you because it's not my own experience.
Okay.
And my own experience is my great truth. And if you've seen a monkey and I haven't seen a monkey, then I'd say that you're lying. When in fact, maybe if I leaned in and tried to understand why you've seen that and where you've seen that, then maybe I'll know that your environment is different.
Okay.
Right? So we seek to understand. That's one of the big things that diversity requires, is that I understand you. And if you take the word understand, you break it into two parts. Understand. What's under your standing? Mm-hmm. So what is the ground that you're standing on? Right? So to understand somebody is to know and to seek to know, what are you standing on?
Okay.
What created the moment that you're standing on now? What are the cumulative experiences of your life that create the perspective that you have?
Okay.
And I want to honor that, because you didn't choose all of those things. Some of those things are a product of your environment.
Absolutely, yeah. So we don't have any choice about where we're born.
Yeah.
Any of those things.
To answer your question, it takes work, it takes leaning in, it takes having conversations. It also takes intentionality with choosing leaders. So we look for people. We look for people that are diverse, who are black and brown. In our staff, we have Thai people, we have Filipinos, we have African Americans, we have Latinos, we have but we look for that on our staff. We look for that. We don't just, pick the next qualified white guy. We're looking for people that are diverse, because it should be represented in our leadership, should be represented in our congregation.
Okay.
Yeah, this is actually it reminds me a little bit of our conversation last week with Edward about like the whole Floyd verdict and the Chauvin verdict, and you were saying there were a decent number of mostly white evangelicals who were really upset about that. Is that correct?
Again,
I'm not saying all white. Nobody's saying that. We're just saying there happened to be.
Yeah, I guess I'm cautious about painting with a broad.
I'm not painting with a broad. I don't mean to do that. I'm just saying but what he's saying is something different, where it's a little bit different than this, because there is an entrenched conservatism. Mm-hmm. A lot of Christians, and not just evangelicals, also Catholics, because I was raised Catholic, and a lot of my family and a lot of my contacts are very, very conservative. Mm-hmm. And very, very. Mm-hmm. What do you mean police shoot? No. They must have been doing something wrong. But all this other stuff, they're not open to it. You know what I mean? And I think we see that in this world a lot.
Yeah.
And it turns a lot of people off as well. And I think it sounds like you're kind of being like, hey, man.
Well, if you've never experienced it, it's hard for you to understand.
For sure. So
leaning in is a part of gaining that knowledge and understanding where someone else is coming from. So to lean in is like, hey, what is your experience? Why? right?
Yeah.
And here's what happens a lot of times. Is the analogy I like to use is like, see,
What did he say?
All right, Silas.
What did he say?
Something.
You go get it, man.
Careful on the stairs, buddy.
Just careful. Yeah. No accidents.
They like to talk, huh?
it's all
Yeah,
right.
my kids are big time talkers.
It's all right.
Take after Pop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So an analogy I like to use when it comes to understanding is, and sometimes where it ends for people, is I can have a fork, right? And I can say, hey, this fork is for eating. That's my truth, because that's how I've experienced this fork, and that actually may be how the fork is intended to be designed, right? But you, Paul, may be like, well, my experience with the fork is that it's a weapon.
Okay.
Right?
I was really hoping you were going Little
Yeah.
Mermaid style with combing.
I've experienced
but
it
all
as
right,
a trident, right?
Yeah.
But you've experienced it as a weapon, so it's been weaponized against you, and you've been hurt by that fork. And that's the majority of your experiences with that fork have led you to now create a perspective and a truth about that fork that may not be how it's intended, but it's how you've perceived it.
Yep. So
Right.
it's sitting on
That's
your
a great
table
metaphor.
So-
when I walk into your
That is a great
house,
metaphor for
may
policing.
seem like I'm in danger.
So here's what happens. I say, this is a fork, it's for eating. And you say, no, it's not. It's hurtful. I say, yes, it is. It's for eating. You're a liar. You just don't get the truth of this fork. And you say, well, you don't understand how bad that's hurt me. And then I get mad at you and I jab you in the head with a fork. Well, now here's what happens. I jab you in my truth. I beat you over the head with it. And now you can't see the truth of the intention of the design past the pain in your forehead.
Right.
And that's what happens when we don't listen to each other.
Man, that fork's starting to sound like a Confederate flag, isn't it?
Oh, really? It sounds to me like the cops, really.
Yeah.
But
Because
also, yeah,
one
a lot of
community,
different
one
symbols.
community
Yeah.
experience. Oh, we eat with this. This is how we run our society. This is great. Another community, that is a weapon,
Yeah.
and now you have to have that discourse to have
Or
a
lack of
fruitful,
trust. Like, I think cops,
result.
I think safety. Another person might see danger. Like
Yeah.
we don't talk to them.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, and
sorry.
so it's the point is not to beat them over the head with your truth. It's to lean in and say, why do you see it that way? And now we're coming from a place of empathy and greater understanding so we can grow towards the true together. And at Abundant Life, at our church, we endeavor to do that. And we have not just mixed racially, but we're also mixed politically. This last season was very interesting for us. We're like split right down the middle, 50-50, Democrat, Republican. So
Right.
it creates a very interesting dynamic for us and a lot of opportunities to have hard conversations. And some people don't want to have those conversations. They end up leaving, and that's okay. We're okay with who we are.
Well, I like this. So what you call leaning in is a form of active listening and sharing, and that's one reason why I have this podcast. I really want to have a diverse set of guests come in and talk about issues. I saw one of my biggest problems in the last couple of years is the political divide I see in America, where it just feels like it's like left, right, left, right, left, right. It's like, hey man, maybe one side's got some ideas about some stuff, maybe the other's got, just like you said. And I think that's one of the most important things. So I'm really glad that you guys bring that to the table with your church.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that you're saying that. I don't even like saying being played. It seems intentional. Like the general broad media, social media, and what would you say, major press, major outlets.
Yeah.
It seems intentional that they are trying to drive divide because that drives viewership or eyeballs on your screens one way or another. And conversation is so key. Like interpersonal communication is so key because you're going to find common ground.
Yeah.
You're going to find something you can stand on. And you can also learn how you can disagree with somebody. Like, it's okay.
And in that discourse, one thing I found that's really, really helpful, and you said it a little earlier, is reflective listening. So that's my ability to, when you say something to me, instead of being from the defense and the hands up, it's, I'm going to repeat back to you what you said, because here's what it does. And now de-escalates. You're participating in the conversation rather than just being spoken to. And you're ensuring that you've caught the ball of understanding. So someone may say something to you and you have all these preconceived understandings of how you see the world, and you'll make assumptions about what they said. So the part of reflective listening is I'm going to repeat back to you what you said to me to ensure that I'm getting what you're intending, that I'm not just perceiving or assuming something you never meant.
Can we have the Abundant Life Christian Center start conducting training for cops? Yeah. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
You call that reflective listening? Sorry,
Yes, sir.
I know you were trying to move on to the next point.
Well, that's what you call it. That's what you call leaning in as well, and reflective listening. It's all part of good communication.
I've heard it called mirroring.
Mirroring. That's another word too.
Matching and mirroring as well.
But every time I've ever heard an example of mirroring,
you think about The Office right now
with sales?
No.
What was that one dude from The Office? He's always trying to hard sell everything.
I always heard it from like maybe like a marriage counseling retreat or whatever, and it would always be something like, tell me something that say, Paul, would you marry me?
Mm-hmm. You guys want to mirror each other right now?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Do you want to mirror with us?
Would you mirror me?
Do you want? No. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Get your little coffee.
So I'll explain. I'll explain what they would do. Okay. So go ahead. You say something. You say, "Would you mirror me?"
I already feel more comfortable. We're all in the same posture.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about bodily mirroring.
Oh no, verbally,
because I've heard that body language
like
wise,
a grievance or something that you have.
I've read and heard that if somebody's in agreement with you, a lot of times they'll match your exact posture. For example, so for example, right now, if I was trying to do got you questions and trying to be like, oh, Christianity sucks. Like I was, if that's what I would probably be facing Jordan okay, I have a closed off body, but instead, I'm trying to find points of agreement. We're trying to.
Why don't you justify the Red Sea, man? No, so basically, this would be like, let's say you're driving your car with your wife, and this is like the example they'd use. They'd be like, so your wife says, "Oh, would you marry me?" And then he's like, "Yes, honey, I'll marry you." And then the person would be like, when you turn the heat on full blast and I'm too warm, it makes me not only hot, but frustrated. And then the husband has to say, what I hear you say is...
He's laughing like a guy who's already married.
Yeah, what I hear you say is...
He knows what you're talking about.
When I turn the heat on full blast, it not only makes you too warm, but also frustrated. But then they would follow up with this last bit.
Hot and bothered.
That must be hard. And that's where the training would end.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, but what do you do with that other than laugh afterwards?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was like anytime I've seen Mirror, I'm like, it's a great principle. I don't know how you execute it always because but reflective listening sounds like maybe a slight variation of
that.
Well,
it's participation in a difficult conversation. Yeah.
That's really easy if you're with a spouse, I would imagine, even though I haven't been married. I've had girlfriends and stuff. And at a certain point, you're just like, okay, all right. You're not listening anymore. Your eyes are rolled up and they're like, yeah, I already told you this and I told you that. And it's just like, so, it takes work to actually lean into the conversation. And like you said, it's work. It's not just like, it's not passive, which is the general thing. It's just you passively listen, you passively pay attention to things around you.
And you're not going to get the growth you need and the diversity you need if you're just listening to your echo chamber of your social media feed that's curated to your likes anyway.
Wow. It just sounds like you're going to be a bad debater, though. I mean, you're not going to win debate club at all. With this attitude.
Remember that joke I was working on where I want to do the sketch so badly? I'll tell Jordan the sketch. It's not even that funny, but I mean, the premise is funny. It's like it's the premise of somebody's on Facebook, right? Because people get on Facebook or Twitter and just start chopping heads. Like, oh my God, Donald Trump is the biggest. How could you say that he saved our country? Whatever. Back and forth. Hillary Clinton, so they're going back and forth. I think of a sketch would be really funny where if somebody was actually on there like typing away. No, Hillary should have said this. Oh no, Trump said that. And all of a sudden, somebody says something. Oh, yeah, you're right. And they go outside, they take their Trump 2020 flag down. They go get a Volvo. They move to Vermont. Like, it's just, like, no one has ever changed their mind. Yes. But yet people every day try to do that in this horrible, horrible discourse. So I love this talk of this listen, this is great.
I think people wake up and they're like, gotta fight the good fight again.
Yeah. Gotta show these
Gotta find the perfect meme that explains myself and God.
Yeah.
All right, is it okay if I pivot a little bit here?
Let's do it.
Yeah, you're good, man.
All right, that was good stuff. All right, so like as I mentioned before, I was raised pretty conservative Catholic, so I guess you could say old world Christianity or whatever. But even still Christianity. And then I know you were raised in, and you are a pastor of I guess you could say more modern Christianity or whatever. It doesn't really matter though. Either way, a lot of the morality and all the rest of it comes from JC, and it's not too different.
JC.
Am I talking about him or am I talking about
Diplomy Guide, JC, Jesus Christ. What's up?
What's up, JC? Yo, I love it. No, all right. So this is we both have we come into the world with somewhat of a similar lens. So looking around, I only paint a little bit of a gothic picture maybe of American pop culture, right? You've got you've got 12-year-olds, swiping through TikTok, seeing people shaking their behinds like they're strippers. You've got all the top music. All the top music is like braggadocio. It's all profanity. Not all profanity, but it's a lot of profanity. It's a lot of explicit stuff. Okay. Sorry, I just got a call. And it's so much of it seems to be like self-glamorization. It seems like the younger generation is very concerned with, Gucci, Prada, all this other stuff. Pornography is more normalized than ever before. Is this a case of there's nothing new under the sun, or is American pop culture more out of line with Christian values than ever?
Well, I mean, in many ways it is, but it's nothing new under the sun in that humanity has been stricken with the same kind of things for a long time, right? In the Christian perspective. So when in Scripture, when Paul writes to the Corinthians, especially the Corinthians, and to some of the other churches that he writes to, he's writing to a church that's deeply divided against itself and that is a part of a very, very secularized culture.
The Roman Empire. Yeah,
where sex is where sex with anything is normalized, where all kinds of things are normalized that are outside of what God's intentional design was from the very beginning. So it's a normal thing for Christianity to exist in the culture that is and not fit in completely, and nor is it supposed to altogether. And that's okay.
So in a way, it's almost like Christianity is almost like counterculture a little bit now.
Yeah.
And you're saying it has been in the past. Maybe there's been times where it got more mainstream. Maybe, let's
100%.
say, maybe the 1950s or something like that, for example. But then on the other hand, of course, maybe civil rights and civil liberties weren't as good in the 1950s, although it was maybe a more moral society for, white people or whatever. But
it's
complicated.
Yes, and today it is. It's very the way that Christianity has always been, the values we've always had, is very counterculture to a lot of the things that society now today, and I would say in the West especially, wants to have everyone accept as capital T truth. And so, there's nothing new under the sun, and that these are not new issues to mankind and to Christians anywhere. But this is definitely a harder time to be a Christian in this culture.
Yeah, it's very seductive, this culture.
Yes, and some Christians
money, drugs, sex.
Yeah, and some Christians have ventured to make it cool, which is great. I'm fine with Christianity being like relevant. There's nothing wrong with being relevant, because I believe that God is relevant to every person because he became man, so he knows us.
Yeah.
But
are there things? Is there anything in particular you guys do with your youth outreach to try to be more relevant, or are you not really compete in that realm? You just sort of offer a different message. How do you do it?
Yeah, so our youth programming, we basically do it in a small group format. So we have a lot of small groups that occur. So these kids get to know some of these youth leaders that get to walk with them, talk with them, do life with them. We call it discipleship. In the world, they would call it mentorship or something like that. But basically, role models that help them grow into the people they're supposed to be. And we don't hold every answer to every question. We don't pretend to. But we do want to help them make the best decisions for themselves. And so we use small groups as a method of that. We also teach and preach to them biblical truths. So
nice, man. If you were to have a message if there's a young person listening today who may or may not be Christian or have heard of the Word of God, what might you say to them, to that person listening?
That's an excellent question. To a young person, I would say, if you have, depends on your lens of Christianity, right? But if you have a lens of a skeptic, where you've seen hypocrisy, where you've seen Christians claim one thing and yet do another, you've seen duplicity in Christians, well, I would say welcome to the party, because we're all like that. I would say that whether you're Christian or not, there's things that you claim to believe, the things that you want to be that you yet don't do. And even Paul writes about this, and he says, I do the things I don't want to do, and I say the things I don't want to say.
Nice job, man.
So there's, Paul, yes, I meant the Apostle
just
Paul.
Just a dumb joke. I know.
I say that almost every day.
There you go. But that's a reality.
That's true.
So hypocrisy is, I think, if you have to the young generation, or anybody really, if you have a view of Christianity where it has to be that these people, these pastors and these whatever, have to be these images of perfection.
Right.
You have the wrong expectation. You're only going to set yourself up for failure. Now, is part of that on the pastor for not being more vulnerable, transparent, and with their own humanity? Yes. Is part of that on the congregant or the follower for putting a expectation on somebody that may not necessarily be fair or human or even biblical? Yes.
Right. Well,
so I would say that, hey, adjust your expectations of pastors, of people, and realize that they're all human, that we're all going to mess up. And that, yes, there are times that I'll say it myself, that I've preached things that I don't fully live up to. Every single time I get up there and I preach things that I don't fully live up to.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's not true.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. That's a great message. I love that message. And I think it's so relevant in this day and age, especially from my angle, as coming up Catholic, because you come up Catholic and all of a sudden you're coming into maturation, all of a sudden you find out about all these sex scandals in the church and how all not all of them, but many of the priests, were touching people and this, that, and the other. And this is right when I'm supposed to be getting confirmed and all the rest of it. And I did get confirmed, but I was like, that puts a grain of skepticism in your mind. You're like, why do I have to keep coming to this place? This is kind of weird. Yeah. Even my first pastor ended up being, I don't know if he was convicted, but charged with some sort of offense. The guy that I used to be the
really.
I was the altar boy for this guy. I never did anything to me, but I was an altar boy. So it's one of those things. And I know you and I talked in the second pod about you wanted to be a pastor, you wanted to be a youth pastor and a musical pastor and all the rest of it, right? And you saw extreme hypocrisy in the church you ended up being in, and then you left in that particular church.
Yeah. I mean, most churches that I've been a part of. I mean, I've had good bosses, and I've had ones that
if you didn't hear the second pod, I don't mean to speak.
I have a sneaking suspicion.
I don't mean to speak for you, but like the straw that broke the camel's back was the pastor was like basically livid and screaming at like a pregnant black lady, just like losing his mind and screaming about abortion or whatever at this pregnant black lady who had already had like a miscarriage or something like that. She had already, so he was just this like sensitive issue, and he was just like hammering her over the head with it. So it was just one of these moments.
Honestly, the harder part for me, I think, is the idea that I sat by and didn't do anything in that situation. So once I finally came to terms with where I was upset with myself, how I could have done something differently, I don't know, trying to live the rest of my life in a way that isn't that passive idiot who was just waiting to play the game that he wanted to play that game with that night with his youth group.
Well, listen, first of all, that is a really challenging experience.
I know you got like a microcosm of it, so you can't pretend to speak to all of it.
Listen, spiritual abuse or things like that is one of the most deepest forms of abuse you can experience, because it goes to the very root of your being and your soul and what you believe about the world. And so that's really, really challenging. And that can really paint, it can put a very bad taste in your mouth of other ministers, of church, of God himself, right? And that's a challenging piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so complicated. I mean, even if, whatever, you're trying not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Of course, we're talking about baby Jesus, right? But I don't know. It's a lot to sift through. So, that's what we've continued to do.
Good. Well, it's a journey. It's a journey for sure.
Yeah.
I would like to share with you my favorite Bible verse. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm sure you've heard of it, both of you. It comes from the Sermon on the Mount. And
not so sure.
Well, if you didn't know, this is the part in
Pastor
the Bible.
Karen, teach us.
The longest period. I think it's the longest period. I confirm with the real pastor here. It's the longest sermon he gives, I believe, in the entire New Testament. And I'll quickly quote from it. It's the part where he's talking about don't worry about material things. I think it's one of the most spiritual messages I've ever heard. So I'll quote this from the New International Version. But therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And then down to verse 34, 6:34. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself.
Come on.
And I think that's a very, very empowering message in a
Yes.
world so concerned about, we got to get enough money. We got to get enough food. We got to get better clothing. But like, it's like,
That's
hey,
the
man.
that's the anti-anxiety verse right there.
It's the anti-anxiety verse. It's like, hey, man, if you believe, if you have some faith, man, God will take care of you. And I've felt that. I've had faith, and I've ridden my bicycle across the entire country. Half of it was alone, and I had faith. I was like, you know what? Somebody's going to give me a place to rest tonight. I'll find some hotel. I'll find somebody.
You did that, bro?
Yeah.
That's what's up.
U.S. ride to save lives.
Dude, that's what's up.
Yeah. I was raising money for suicide awareness. My buddy Joey ended up passing away, and I did that with a friend. And him and I didn't get along. So in Kansas, we split up, and so I did the mountains and the desert alone. And but I went across the entire United States on a bike, and it took a lot of faith.
That's awesome, dude.
Last pod, he enlightened us to certain areas of the country that he would advise you stay away from.
Yeah. I don't want to keep hammering down on certain parts of the country, but yeah, the Panhandle smells like animals. There's a lot of livestock in the Panhandle, Oklahoma, into Texas. Don't go. The insects are this big. Okay, but do you have a favorite Bible verse, or do you want to comment on the Sermon on the Mount, this section, or anything?
Man, I love that message because it's an antidote to anxiety. Antidote to anxiety. It kind of lets you know that God is a God of the universe, and He hung the stars in the sky, and He's a creator, and He knows above all and is all, and sometimes the mystery of life, when we deal with things that we don't understand, that are painful, that are hard, that are difficult, that are evil, that don't necessarily line up with our faith and our wonder-working God, right? But there's still elements of wrong, and so I think that verse says to me is to have peace in that, because if God put the birds in the air and feeds them, then He's going to feed you, and it may not be how you initially wanted or understood or believed it would happen. But
it might not be Chipotle, guys.
Yeah, but it will happen. And so I think that taking rest in the presence of the moment and realizing that God is for you and not against you, and that yes, the world will have bad things, and yes, there will be hard times, and Scripture does not prescribe perfection in our human experience, but suffering is a part of it. But we can have hope and faith in the God that we serve. And
Thank you, sir.
My favorite verse is Proverbs 20, verse 5.
Okay.
And it says this: "The purposes of a man's heart is deep waters, but a man of understanding will draw them out." The purposes of a man's heart is deep waters, but a person of understanding will draw them out. And so,
yeah, what does that mean to you? That's deep. That's like poetry.
Yeah, it's in Proverbs, which is the book of wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. But in other words, the purposes of a man's heart, the definition of the word is the reason why something exists or is created. The reason that you exist, Paul, and that you exist, Karam, and the other people exist, it's deep, it's complicated, it's built on the cumulative events of their lives. And so, as people, if we want to draw those purposes out of others, and I told you earlier that one of my purposes is to help other people achieve their purpose. Mm-hmm. So that's why I love this verse, because in order to do that, it takes understanding to draw them out. Purposes of a man's heart is deep waters, but a person of understanding will draw them out. Mm-hmm. That it doesn't happen easily. It doesn't happen through casual conversation. It happens through leaning in, being empathetic, understanding where a person's coming from, and then from that place, their purpose starts to rise to the top. And now I can help them in a more strategic, in a more real, and a more applicable way.
Okay, so it's sort of like we're not in this alone kind of thing. It's sort of like it almost sounds almost like dialogical. It almost takes more than one, maybe a mentor or someone else of understanding to help you to sort of. Because it's hard to do it all on your own. Just look in the mirror and say, this is what my purpose is.
There's another amazing proverb that I love. It's not in Scripture necessarily, although it's taught throughout Scripture. It's like a Chinese proverb, I believe. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Mm. And so we are designed, and I believe that God designed us as people to need relationship, that we don't all have every piece of it, and we need other people to fulfill parts of us that we don't have. Paul talks about that in Ephesians with the many parts of the body. How can the hand say to the eye, I have no use for you? They need each other. And so we all need each other. We need the gifts in each other. We need those things to fulfill. No one has everything. So we need each other to be built up in one another. But we can't be built up in ourselves if we're not accepting of the gifts and the abilities of other people.
Nice, man. That's so fair. I like that a lot.
I like the imagery of drawing out in the proverb that you mentioned because if you think of like a pump, you pump by hand to get to water. It's not a one trick pony. It's not a one button click. It's a process that could take longer on a given day than another day. Could be a multi-day thing. So it's good imagery. Good imagery. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, man. That. Yeah, man. Awesome. So that kind of lends itself right into the MeshTeams podcast, I think.
Yeah.
We can go into that a little bit. You started that with your friend Addison.
Yep.
And you mentioned you also have a company as well. Could you go into this podcast and the company a little bit? The MeshTeams podcast?
I have a business called MeshTeams where we do team building and leadership consulting. So again, this kind of goes with some of my original purpose of bringing the best out of people.
Yeah.
And so MeshTeams, what we do is we work with teams primarily, and then also with specific leaders of teams and help them get better. We make teams better. So we work. It's called sociometry, which is the understanding of multiple parts within one organism and how they work together and flow together. Because as you know, if you're on a team, there's different people on that team with different personalities, with different quirks, with different triggers, all those things. And so what we try to do is we try to help the team understand those things and work better together and honor each other's gifts, and help each other's weaknesses, things like that. And so we have a process that we do that by. And also with leaders, I love working with leaders. My master's degree is going to be in organizational leadership. If a leader gets better, everybody gets better. And so I believe that leadership is a key ingredient to helping progress happen in your organization, whether it's a business or a church or whatever. Good leaders make good people.
Yeah.
And so we run after that. We help people and grow in their leadership ability and in their ability to work with other people within the context of a team.
One of my buddies is a director, and he told me like watching like movies. He's like, I mean, if you see an actor just doing terrible, he's like probably a bad actor. If you see a movie where pretty much everyone's doing a bad job, like everybody's bad, that's a bad director.
Ooh, I love that. That's good. That's good.
Because someone else might be able to get more out of at least some of those people.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So mesh, the word mesh, is, if you think about it, I like to use like a soccer net or like a goalie net or whatever, and it's not rigid, because if it's too rigid, it'll break under pressure. It's flexible, but yet it maintains its shape, and that's exactly what we believe teams should be. That they're each are individual strands. They're not a monoculture. They're diverse, but they work together and they can flex with one another dynamically to meet the demands of whatever reality throws at them.
Oh, nice.
So that's how we approach it.
Well, you had a lot of sports teams growing up.
Yeah, I wrestled. I played football, and then in college I did intramural sports. And
nice. As
of like a few years ago, I was even in a flag football league.
Oh man, that's
and
then
awesome. I tore my ACL for the third time, and I said, "Okay, I think I'm done."
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, that's something for the people who didn't do as many. That's something that sports teaches. I think that's good. Like that innate sense of, hey, you need the rest of the team, like this mesh to help you. Growing up, I guess I didn't do as many sports, and the only thing I was more serious about was skateboarding, and that's a little more individualistic to a certain extent. So it's taken me longer to come to like terms with understanding how important a team really is, and but it's all growth. So I really think that's cool and it sounds to me like a lot of what you teach probably leaders has to do with this active listening, I would imagine, and that allows you to actually communicate and work well with the employees or what have you, the organization.
Big time. Yeah. To reflectively listen is to receive feedback in a way that is open, and to receive feedback is to grow. We believe that the foundation of growth is teachability. You can't grow without teachability. So,
when you say teachability, what do you mean?
Then if you're going to go under teachability, it's humility, the ability to recognize that you are flawed. I am flawed. I have blind spots. I can't see all the parts of me that are not working the best. And so to receive feedback or to seek feedback is to seek other people's perspectives and ideas or perceptions of how you come off or how you act.
Yeah.
And being open to hearing those things, which is teachability, openness.
Right.
Openness to hearing those things and taking on new information, even if it contradicts what you understood about yourself.
Yeah.
And taking those things on board and applying them to your life in a way that matters.
I guess I have experiences though, not so much with sports, but with art. Like I've been in a lot of bands and stuff.
But art's big on feedback.
But when I first got into a band, I was 16 years old, and I was the lead singer of Roman Revival.
Yes.
I guess that sounds really pagan now, but
all good.
but for 16 years old, man, I think Josh was in the band for a little while. He played drums once I was kicked out.
My bro.
Yeah, your brother was. So at any rate, I was the lead singer at first, and so and we did like 16 shows, and it all went to my head, and I was like, oh no, I was like, no, this song should be, the chord change should be like this, and everybody's like, no, we should do it this way. I'm like, no, I know best, blah, 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 and all this other stuff, and so I just got this huge inflated ego because I was the lead singer, and then one day, I get a phone call. It's like the whole band. I got to go in the basics. I'm crying. They're like, yeah, you're kicked out, man. I'm like, let me have one more week, man. They're like, no. And then I went back to Baker like a week later, and somehow there was like a song playing that they got on the loudspeaker. Remember how they used to play songs on the loudspeaker? And Roman Revival had written this song called "One More Week." Like it was like about me, and I was like so mad after home. Like went right to my girlfriend Hannah. And she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh my God."
You know how all of Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriends feel. Like,
oh my God,
songs written about him.
But like. We've come a long way because, like, not to say that whatever, but like I have this new album coming out, and when me and my producer work on it, Zach, he was the one that actually kicked me out when I was 16, but it doesn't matter. Like, I love him to death. The point being is like, it's like we now have gotten to this new place where it's like, oh yeah, okay, oh yeah, no, that's pretty good. I try to say like, I try to be like, hey, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome. If he's presenting me with something, and it's like, oh, but this one spot, man, what do you think about this spot? But it's not personal. I try to, like, it's a whole different vibe than when I was 16 years old and being like, no, it has to be this way. Like, I'm right all the time. I'm like, oh, well, why did you do this? What do you think? And it's a whole process of collaboration to try to actually get things done in this world.
That's how you grow.
And that's how you grow, and you have to let your ego go a little bit in order to let it happen.
I think 16-year-old me had to be absolute hell to work with. Like just awful in so many ways.
Me too.
Yeah, it's just so
right.
It's so weird. And yet, any 16-year-old we have no patience for. Right? I mean, it can be the case.
Were you controlling when you were in bands?
Oh yeah, definitely. Too controlling. Because no one could see how freaking hard I was working. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of those.
For me, it was more like, you don't know how smart I am. You don't know how genius I am. Like,
it was just
like, it was horrible. Everyone's ego manifests differently.
Yeah, I couldn't see any of my flaws, and I'll just total focus on why no one else was working really hard. Should have been like, oh, you guys don't want to practice like multiple times a week? Maybe we shouldn't be in a band together then.
Right.
But also, maybe my personality was part of the reason they didn't want to practice a couple times a week.
Who knows? Who knows?
We have a whole podcast. So MeshTeams has a podcast called the MeshTeams podcast, and we are just, I think tomorrow. What's tomorrow? May what? 5th. We're coming out with a new episode on receiving feedback. Oh, so
cool.
We did our first one on giving feedback. This will be our second episode, so we're noobs to the space, but we're
awesome,
excited to be here.
Yeah, man, that's tremendous.
Like how to prepare yourself to hear feedback?
So how to give feedback, one. So like as a leader or someone that you need to give somebody feedback, that can be difficult. So
the sandwich method? How
do you present hard information? And not just hard information, how do you present celebratory information?
Okay.
Because feedback's not always bad. It's not always your weakness. Sometimes we have to speak life to one another and say, hey, I see this gift in you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Keep going. You're marching in the right direction. So feedback is looked at as like this like big scary monster of negativity, but it doesn't have to be. It goes both ways. So giving feedback is one, then receiving feedback is the hunger within yourself to take on new information and new perspectives, even if it's not what you are intending.
Yeah. One thing I've learned as giving feedback because I also, when I'm doing like direction, like we did a commercial recently for an insurance agency, and when I'm doing that, I guess what I found helpful in giving feedback is actually trying to, it's almost like two positives and one negative kind of thing. Like, you're doing this great, you're doing awesome, man, tremendous. I love the way you're doing it with the posture,
sandwich. Yeah.
And then it's like, but if you could just give me a little more smile at the end, Bob, give me a little more smile. It would, because you're frowning at the camera. So why do you give me a little more smile?
And that will bring out how beautiful your teeth are. Like it's a compliment and self-compliment.
So
yeah, that's been my method lately.
I don't typically prescribe that altogether because what ends up happening is it makes the compliment disingenuous.
Okay.
And so you get to the point. That's one of the things that we say when giving feedback is, don't fluff it up forever. You can tell them that you appreciate them and you can pre-qualify some of your statements, but don't don't butter them up before you put them on the grill. Like just especially if it's difficult information, let them know. And then, but that doesn't mean that you don't ever butter somebody up.
Okay, so maybe keep the buttering separate.
Separate, yeah.
So you can butter them amidst this whole discourse, but when you're giving the feedback, give them, if it's negative feedback, give the negative feedback.
Yeah, that's the big sandwich.
Yeah.
That's the long view, the day long.
Get to it, because most people are intuitive enough to know what's coming.
That makes sense.
And so they're like, okay, fine, get through it. But
it's almost their tone.
Yeah, and
yeah,
a lot of
you're doing this, but
or when they hear the negative thing, it disqualifies all the positive thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's important that people hear the positive things. But it's important that they don't hear that in conjunction every time with correction.
That's fair. I
because
appreciate that.
Then it means nothing.
No, thanks. That's insight. I like that. Mm-hmm. That might change my ways a little as a director even. Thanks, Jordan.
Right, no problem, bro.
How are we doing on time? Okay, so I'm going to give you the... We're doing well. Let me give you the deep, homie question that I like to ask most of my guests.
All right.
I think I forgot to ask Zach, but a couple weeks ago we had two guys that were jumping for joy at the concept of the neuro chip. All right. So a big trend, it seems like, is human beings are, even you look at the younger generation, they are glued to this phone, right? Like it's almost an appendage. You know what I mean? Yep. So
they call them phygital. They feel through digital means.
Yeah. So this trend, it's like we're almost becoming cyborgs. If you know what a cyborg is, like a cybernetic organism plus a biological organism, and it's like it's almost like, for one thing, it's like with the Google thing, it's like, hey, I don't know what that is. Let me just find out. All that other stuff, search engines, phone. Let me take a picture of this. Oh, I gotta get a selfie. It's almost like we're one with this thing. Mm-hmm. And so you could almost say, like, we're becoming like cyborgs. And I think the trend is, if you look at Elon Musk and Neuralink and what he's doing with that, putting the chip in the brain and all that other stuff, I think that future generations of humanity will probably, not necessarily everybody, but I think they're going to just, hey, to heck with holding this thing all the time, let me just put it in my head. Mm-hmm. I truly think that's the trend we're on. I'm not saying good, bad. I'm saying, hey, I think this is the trend we're on.
I hear
you. Well, how do you feel about that? Would you get the chip if they had it tomorrow? Elon Musk is like, hey, you can Google in your brain, you can take pictures all you want.
No, I wouldn't get the chip tomorrow. Having some.
Man, I wanted to gamble on that one.
Well, remember we had gamers on here on the 420 episode, and they were like, yeah, I can't wait
now.
Yeah,
like for real, right now. I want it now. Well, I think, like, what?
I value my individual liberty too much,
right?
So I think that by putting a chip in your brain, where other people have access to that chip, most likely, because technology is rarely ever private. Okay, so I just don't feel that your control. It's in my brain. Like that's the one sanctuary of independence I have.
Right.
I don't know if I want all of that there. I like having, and this, who knows? Maybe in 20 years I'm going to be like the old man, like that's you're all wasting your minds away. Something. I don't know why I'm Southern all of a sudden. Just like I feel like an old angry man's always Southern. What the darn nation?
What in the darn nation?
Just like how a really smart guy is always British.
I'm gonna take you outside.
Yes. Yeah. So no, I would not. Definitely not.
I feel you, bro.
I like to keep those things separate.
So there's a book called Feed by M.T. Anderson. It's a youth science fiction novel I read a while ago. And in the book, it's like they got the chips now and everything like that. But there's a community of dissenters or whatever on Earth that won't go to the chip, but they're stuck at the glasses. Like, so they went from phones to like glasses. So there's Google Glasses or whatever that give you almost all the feed information, but it's not actually in your mind. So I almost feel like our generation, if they were to premiere this in 5 years or whatever, we might be like, all right, maybe we'll get the glasses, maybe. But I don't think we'd spring for the chip, whereas I don't know about the younger people who are just like, hey, digital world, real world.
Another interesting thing
difference.
would be seeing like people that are very natural oriented, like all natural stuff, and like, which is, I think, is a very positive thing, because, if you go to like how God made man, the closer you get to that, the better you usually are. Like the things you can kill with your hands or you can pick with your hands, those are the things you should probably eat, not the things that are mixed with all this other crap.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
So in the same way, technology has short-circuited some of our biological innate design. And I don't know if that's benefited us over the long term, because if all that was to go away, what are we? What do we have left, and how do we survive? And so I think there will be a counteraction to some of that. And you already see it. There's like a phone out there called like the Simple Phone,
Right.
which is like just literally call and text. It's pretty and modern, but but it's like my wife's like all about it. She wants to get one. So,
Yeah.
So I think there's always going to be that reaction to say, hey, I want to go back to what is most human to be, where my mind is my mind and I can think creatively. And I think sometimes Google search engines has shortcut our creative process as mankind in some ways. It's also made it in some ways different because you can adapt new information quicker. Mm-hmm. But to create originally, sometimes I'll even say this, like for when I'm writing a message or a sermon, right? I've learned to not go listen to other people's stuff because I now have the global web to listen to all the other perspectives. And usually nothing that's been preached has been preached for the first time. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do first is I'll try to use my own mind after I read something and create myself for my own inference. And then I'll bring in other voices.
Yeah.
So, I think that there's a balance to that. And, God gave us trees, we make tables. And so I think that, it's a part of our design is to be creative. But I think that if you shortcut that with all these supplements, that it may, and I could be dead wrong, and I'm okay with that, but I think it may inhibit our ability to create things that are original.
And I think it cuts into retention a little bit too, because sure, okay, what was the year of the Civil Rights Act? Oh yeah, okay, but do you actually remember 10 minutes later? Mm-hmm.
You don't need to anymore.
Yeah.
Well, we don't really need to, but at the same time, though, I don't know what just happened.
I guess I'm again trying to find like the duality or the like like how you were saying before, like this is true and this is true, that they are not necessarily completely opposing. It's that there are advantages.
Well, it's a wonderful blessing. It's a wonderful blessing.
Right, that being natural is we're getting further away from it, which there's positives and negatives, basically, is the way I see it. But
well, I like having the technology. I like having the phones. I like having the ability to look anything up at any given time. But it's about using it correctly and using it well for your own creative standing and all the rest of it. That's what we're looking for.
The cost of progress. To progress, there's going to be a cost, and you don't always know the long-term cost of that progress until you get there. And so, we've seen this with climate change, right? We made progress to certain things that now has cost us things in the long run that are different. So I think that, monoculture farming, right? We wanted progress was that we can have whatever vegetable when we want it, where we want it. And but the cost of that has been a lack of diversity in vegetables and not having real nutrients, and the real wheat that God made and created for us to eat is hard to find now. Now it's all
the GMO wheat.
It's all different, and it makes you fatter and it makes you less healthy because your body wasn't designed to eat it.
And you have an uptick in the whole celiac.
Yeah, like the sermon's pointed at one of us. Jeez.
Well, we got the uptick in the.
It's pointed right at me, brother. I'm pointing right at myself and my love handles. Again,
I love pizza too. I want that old wheat, man.
Listen,
I like the old wheat.
Like I said,
I don't want no celiacs.
I'm preaching something I don't fully live up to. Let me tell you, I'm a hypocrite with this. I know that it's probably true, yet I don't. I still eat pizza. Yeah. I had pizza yesterday. So
I had pizza 2 days ago. Pizza is so good.
It's my favorite.
It's hard to beat pizza. Is it even possible to get that kind of wheat anymore? If you were to find some
in
Italy or something, maybe.
Probably. I know, like in some like rural countries and agrarian societies, they have some of the original stuff.
Yeah.
Don't let it get close to the GMO stuff. Monsanto's going to win out.
Monsanto, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Your seeds.
We are not making any medical or scientific claims on the podcast. I get like a cease and desist letter in the mail from Monsanto.
Yeah, great.
Did you really?
No.
Not yet, but keep going, buddy.
We're just a little paranoid in this podcast. We can't talk about COVID. YouTube's got a whole COVID policy.
You said it too many times already.
I didn't even make an opinion. Any hoot. Oh my gosh. Anyway, thank you so much, Pastor Jordan, for coming on today and having a chat with us.
Karam, this was super fun. I would love to come back. You guys were a lot of fun to talk to.
Yeah,
awesome, man.
Yeah, really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Well, all right, man. Any take-home message? I know you gave a take-home message already to the youth, but if you have any other message for those free thinkers out there.
An aging person over the hill?
Aging person
knows the end is near.
What about for an infant? No, I'm just kidding.
For the older generation, you can define what older is in your own minds. You who are listening, I would say that you have a benefit that this younger generation doesn't. They are information rich and wisdom poor, so they can get information whenever they want, but they don't have the wisdom to know how to apply that because they don't have the experience to teach them. You have the experience, and we need you. And there's parts of our knowledge and our progression and our ability to acquire things that you need from us to keep yourself young. But we need each other. So the older generation, I would say to you, give us your wisdom. We need it. Don't reject us. Lean into us. We need you.
Wonderful.
All right, you heard it here. The Deep Homie Guide. Lean in, baby. Lean in. All right, this has been the Deep Homie Guide to the 21st Century. Today with Pastor Jordan Carter. Thank you so mumuch for coming in, Pastor.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for spreading the word with us. It's me, Deep Homie K, P. Daddy Woods, May 4th, 2021. And remember,
keep it deep, homies.